everybody. Happy Wine Wednesday. We just a couple announcements. We're not on Instagram this week because my computer said right before we started, and the Instagram software is on the other computer that went. So I'm on a second computer. That's why it looks a little funny in the background and stuff, coloring. Because I don't have my fancy schmancy camera. That was number one. So if you usually watch on Instagram, hopefully you've come over to YouTube because we're not going to be on Instagram today. Number two, I can't remember if we discussed it during the live stream last week or in the after party, but there is a very important bill that we need to discuss. We're actually going to make that the topic next week because I was under the weather this week and I didn't get a chance to advertise it. And we want to make sure that everybody knows, because anybody in the saltwater world, or anybody period, should care about this. We need to fight this bill. And it is HR 4521. I don't know I don't have the bill name right now, but we'll talk about all that next week, I promise. So if you're tuning in for that, we can have a short discussion about it, but we're going to repeat it all next week. So it's just open chat tonight because final announcement is I have to get out of here by like 9:45 at the latest. I always say that. I know Cheryl told me, but this time I have to pick up my daughter from work. So anything you want to ask or chat about, put it in the chat ASAP. All right. I am fortunate. Hey, Francis, jump in if you want. Hey, Kevin. Hey, Seahorse Corner. Anybody who wants to jump in can, because it's open chat. But I am going to try to get Dan and try to get Tyann and Robert back next week to discuss this bill. So hopefully we'll have them here. Like I said, I just wasn't prepared to do it this week. So that will be next week. And so now let's talk seahorses. I'm fortunate to have Ray, Cheryl, and Holly with me to chat. So anybody jump in? What's going on in your lives? What's going on with your seahorses?
If anybody can actually pull up a site that I can go to and read the actual act, that's excuse me, section 71102 that Holly was referring to, that applies to our trade. If somebody can get me a link to the actual wording of that act, not somebody else's interpretation, but I've spent
Gotcha. I've got an actual copy of it. I just got to find it.
Link there. I've probably spent a good hour searching, and all I get is somebody's interpretation. So in my experience, when stuff like this happens, the people that are doing the interpreting of the law go way overboard in their worries about it.
Well, this one's very worrisome, but I will, Ray, because I know you'll read the fine print, and that's what I'll do is when we advertise for next week, I will send you personally a link, Ray, to the actual wording, not someone's interpretation. I get your point. And then I will put that in the links. Hopefully,
I did find one site, but it blanks out on me because I'm in Canada.
When I pulled up the actual text of HR 4521, which is super long, and I went through all the sections, but I cannot find a section 71102.
No, it's not
unless
there.
they said it was added last minute. Does that mean maybe it's not on the to show you the text? Could that be it?
I'm sorry,
I'm listening.
Well, they're saying they slipped it in kind of last minute. So I'm wondering if that's why it's not in the text of the actual HR 4521 bill.
Yeah, I guess that's possible.
Because I can't figure out any other reason why you can't see it. But I've read it. There's
if you Google changes to the Lacey Act, that's where you're going to get into start getting the information.
I did that, but the only thing that the latest stuff that comes up is, I think the 7th month was last year.
Well, I will. That's a good thing, Ray, because once I get a link and one that will work for you, we'll be more prepared to discuss it next week.
Because I Googled it and it pulls up the actual criteria that they're using and what they're discussing with it.
I see that, but I don't see the bill itself.
You really don't have to worry.
Wait, what'd you say, Holly?
I said I find about it, but not the actual bill itself.
Well, I bet Chris can help us with that if you're watching Chris, or if not, I'll get with him afterwards, because he's the one that kind of alerted us to it a few weeks ago. And then last week, Diane brought it up, and it's really important. But guys, I will put a link, because if you're like, what the heck are these people talking about? Not only will I find a link for everyone to read the bill or interpretations, but I will share it around in every group that I can and get as many people here next week to discuss it, because it's going to affect the hobby greatly, is my
Well, it's
opinion.
going to affect everyone, really, when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Do you want real? Go ahead. Go ahead, Cheryl.
For those that haven't read anything on it or heard of it, basically what they're doing is trying to modify the Lacey Act. And what this would do, and I'm just going to give you a real quick overview, but it basically, if you have a parrot, and the parrot could conceivably exist in the U.S. On its own, then you would not be. You could keep the parrot, but if you move to a different state, need veterinary care in a different state, anything else, you cannot cross state lines with that animal. Then they're doing this to fish. So anything that has the potential to be able to live in waters around the U.S. would technically be banned under this proposal. And it would be very devastating to the hobby, to the breeders, and conceivably to a large variety of species, because they're even talking about enacting this for zoos and aquariums, the national aquariums. And as such, they would not be able to. It's like right now, if the Washington, D.C. zoo has a cheetah that's not mated, and the Dallas Zoo has a male and a female, and right now they can move them back and forth across state lines. This would prohibit the crossing of state lines by any of these facilities, and conceivably even could ban specific species that are currently in aquariums and zoos, because they have the potential to be released into the U.S. and compromise indigenous species. That's the rationale they're using.
Well, and next week, when we have everybody in to chat more about this, just to let you know, we'll have, read it beforehand, but we'll discuss more of, what we can do about it. Diane has some great ideas, and, possible petitions and stuff like that. Ray may have a different opinion, and we may be over worrying. Once he reads it, he'll be able to tell us. But Cheryl, so basically, I don't know what that means, right? But basically, I'm sorry, lost my train of thought reading a comment. So, Cheryl, basically they're saying that the reason is so that no invasive species are released into the oceans and et cetera. That's the point. How does that have anything to do with state lines? I don't get it, really.
Yeah. Well, like they have lionfish in the Caribbean right now, which are not indigenous. We have Burmese pythons in the Everglades, which are not indigenous. And of course, they have a negative impact on our indigenous species. The difficulty is, in many instances, some of these species would not be alive or in existence any longer if they had not been kept in aquariums and zoos.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, right. Sounds scary. So everybody, when I post the links and share in all the groups, reshare with me, and I will. We'll all read up on it, get our ideas together, and get together next week and chat about it.
You're going to have to leave goldfish off the white list because they are injurious.
What'd you say?
You go flush them down the toilet, and it goes to the coves here in London, and then the goldfish there wipe out all the natural life forms in there.
Well, that's the problem.
They would consider everything invasive except for a dog or cat in the beginning until it was proven otherwise, is how I read it. Well, so that means everything. I mean, everything: birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, fish, all of it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I keep getting distracted, guys. Go ahead.
Going on while they're trying to make that list, how long it's going to take before an animal is considered safe.
Well, and what I was going to say is usually all of these things that they're trying to do, they usually do have good intentions. You know, there's usually reasoning behind it. And just for kicks, I will see if it's possible to get Kevin, who's with MASNA and wrote articles about the lionfish and invasive species and et cetera here, because he might have a different opinion. I doubt it, since they support the hobby so much, but it'll be interesting to see what different people think about, because like I said, usually they're trying to do something good, you know. But
Yeah.
anyways, so that's topic. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I was going to say, basically, we could lose the ability to, we technically could keep Erectus and Reedi and dwarfs, the little zots. But beyond that, then it could conceivably become illegal to keep any other species of seahorse.
Crazy.
And when that kind of stuff goes on, first of all, something like Hippocampus combs or some of the cold water species like pots or Hippocampus zebra would not be able to survive in our coastal waters. The temperatures are too cold, too warm, and it's not a big deal. But nobody's usually, when you get into stuff like this, it's a kind of more of a knee-jerk reaction. It's like everything is blocked, and I as a zoologist have problems with that.
Right. It's the weighing of the benefits and what you're taking away. And so, Kevin just made the point, each state has its own law. Everything's smaller to me today, guys, on this computer. Each state has its own laws that may be more strict. The federal law would preempt any incursion of invasive species via interstate commerce or transport. So, you know, it's like, that's what I'm saying, is we'll have people on both sides of the idea next week, and we'll just discuss it. And then if we decide, you know, we need to do something, those that support doing something can jump on board and do something. But we'll make that the topic next week. And so real quick, and that's really interesting too, because, and I really hope, Chris, if you're watching, you got to come next week and be in the video, because that's one of the things Australia did from the very start. That's why they can't get Erectus, because they won't take in any imports of any of these things. They'll export them, you know, but they won't take imports, because I think that's the main reason, is they don't want to mess up the genetic stuff in the ocean, you know? Yeah.
I mean, Erectus could probably outcompete white eyes in a heartbeat.
True.
And that would be a disaster for their indigenous, fauna and flora.
Right.
But it's one of those things where there's such a thing as a knee-jerk reaction, and such a thing as a common sense stipulations. And I think we need to look more for common sense stipulations.
Those words aren't in the government's language. That common sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And everybody's commenting different stuff. I'm trying to put them all up, but yeah, it's just, you know, Australia doesn't take imports. And I thought it through, and I was like, well, you know, why wouldn't Erectus go to a secure and good facility like Seahorse Australia, where they would captive breed them and blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is, just like the lionfish, it isn't the facility or even the public aquarium that's doing the releasing. They would never do that. They know better. It's the people they're sold to. And people don't realize. That's why, like I said, MASNA, you can look up the lionfish article. There was also one in Calliope, I believe. People don't realize, even if you can't take care of your pet anymore, it got bigger than you thought or whatever, if you release it, it is messing stuff up. For sure, for real.
Well, it's like years ago, people were really big on getting caimans as pets, the little alligators. And what would happen is, once they grow and start getting aggressive, people were flushing them down the toilets. The problem is, guess what? They were able to survive that and thrive, and became a serious problem.
Yeah.
Can you imagine alligators in the sewer system? Holy moly, that's just crazy. And it really does extend to all different kinds of topics. And we're going to talk seahorses in just a sec. If you're someone new to the channel and you just want to hear about seahorses, this is related, but next week we'll really focus on this. But we are going to talk seahorses in just a second, because I have some questions for Cheryl. But it's interesting too about it being different state laws and et cetera, and how they find a need for federal. And it really does go state to state, because when Dan and I were first talking, and he was teaching me about breeding and such, and pain shipping is and all this other stuff. He said one of his things, and he taught this to Lucy, who became a breeder, is you have to get permitted. You have to have a permit to do live, or I can't remember exact wording, but basically you had to be good with not only the Fish and Wildlife, but also some other authority. You had to be registered and permitted by these 2 different places. So when I decided I was going to breed and sell seahorses, I, called every place I could think of in my state, which is Indiana, and tried to figure out, weave through the taxes and the, LLC and all that crap. And I eventually found out that in Indiana, there's nothing. I finally got someone to tell me, you don't have to be registered anywhere. You don't have to tell anybody. But then it comes into, well, what if I ship to Florida though? Then, it's just all, I can see the need for something federal. I don't know.
Well, it's one thing to enact laws, but it's another thing to enact laws that are detrimental to not only livelihood, which is one piece of it, but more importantly to the animals themselves. And one thing I've always loved about Australia is how strict they are in the exportation of their indigenous flora and fauna. They're very, very specific, and I respect them for having the laws that they do. But they're not banning the average person from being able to keep seahorses, which is basically one of the things that the new additions to the Lacey Act would do, in essence.
Right. Oh, I hear you. And like I said, guys, next week we're going to focus more in on what to do about it, because Diane has some really good ideas. And so to be continued, I suppose. Anybody who has another comment or question about it, we will answer it today, of course, but to be continued, more info next week on this, and I'll make sure you can read it yourself. So on to seahorses. Holly, what's new with you?
Well, I got the stuff you sent me, which was the rubble rock for the amphipods. So I put that through. I gave it 24 hours of bleach, and then I rinsed it. I left it outside for a couple days. I brought it in today, and then I need to test the water, put it in water and make sure there's no chlorine in it, that kind of thing. So I'm getting it ready for the amphipods, and then I'm getting ready to make my K1 reactor. I found out my husband does not have a soldering iron, but they're like $5 at Harbor Freight, I found out. So tomorrow I'm going to be going to town and I'll pick one up, because he has a drill, but I couldn't imagine drilling all the holes in the bottle. When I watched a video. A soldering iron is a tool that heats up. It's made to melt metal, to like a little tiny welding tool type thing. But that's the best tool to poke holes in the 2-liter bottle to put the K1 media in, because I watched a video on it and the guy's just like poke, 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 and he's done. Whereas he's like, you can use any round object tool. He says you can use a drill, but it's a lot more labor into it. So I'm like, I'm just going to get a $5 soldering iron, because it probably won't be the only one I ever make, so so I'm going to do that soon. And so getting ready to switch out my tank from live rock to fake.
Yeah. Well, hey, keep us updated on the progress. Tag me if you post anything. I did a video. I still haven't gotten it done because it just needs a little more editing. But I did a very short, quick video showing how I made mine. I used a nail, and screwed it in. And then I used scissors. Like I put the side scissor in and just twirl it, because I wanted to get it. Just be sure you get the size that you need for the airline, because you want it to be tight. But it, you don't want it to ever come out. And mine, I'm still having trouble with finding. I think it was Francis even asked the question when we were talking about this a different week. I'm having a hard time with getting an air pump that will, work for the long haul. I've been through 2 already. It's just, they're just so worthless anymore. They die so quickly.
I've been using for about 20 years.
See that, and they make
That's
stuff.
the problem. Is the new ones aren't 20 years old. They're made
Well,
to
not
last
good
a
anymore.
year or so.
I was gonna say most of my pumps are at least 15 years old or older, but
Yeah,
they were made in Italy and have a lifetime warranty.
See,
yeah, a lot
That's
of
right.
old
Mine
ones.
just
Yeah,
are
they
the
were
Pond
good.
Master ones.
yours is what, Ray?
They're called Pond Master.
Pond Master. Huh?
Yeah.
I'll look.
See if they
They're
still
not
make
little
them.
ones,
Yeah,
but I've got the big ones because the skimmers that I had, my air stones and all my skimmers were 7 inches long, 2 inches square, and the holes in them were 7/8 of an inch in diameter. So it takes a lot of air for them, and I had a lot of skimmers, so I needed a lot of air. And when I first played around, um, I went to a local store here, and we took out 4 of their biggest pumps that they had. We hooked them up, and it didn't hold, just didn't do anything with this size of an air stone we had. So I knew I had to go bigger. And when I went looking, I found these Pound Master ones, and so I went for the biggest one I had, and it was enough for a few of the skimmers, but it wasn't enough to handle all the rest of my system too, where I had my breeding stuff
Mm-hmm.
and the green water,
Yeah.
when I was culturing mycid and copepods, that kind of thing. It was just so much air I was using. Like I had over 1,000 gallons at the time, just in the basement there. And these Pond Master ones, they're not all that expensive, probably a lot cheaper in the States. And they just last and last. One of them finally did start wearing out and getting down, so I bought a kit, and I think the kit was about $35. And so I just rebuilt it and
Nice.
it was on.
Well, one of the things I think I was doing wrong, my camera's gonna go away for a minute because I'm gonna grab something to show you guys. But one of the things I think I was doing wrong, I think Cheryl told me one week, is that because like the bigger the air pump gets, right, then they start adding more outputs or input or output, whatever, more things that you can attach air to. But like I only had it going to one, and Cheryl made the suggestion, we'll just stick an open air line on the other, and it's just more oxygen. It's good.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing that up until this most recent one, and this most recent one seems to be lasting. And it's because so the question is, do you guys think that because I was trying to block one of the outlets, could that have been like overworking the system because it's trying to go against my block? Or does that make sense at all?
It could be. I'd have to see it, but yeah.
Maybe.
I'm gonna grab something else I want to show you guys. So
Always use
Holly,
them
continue.
when I have multi, I use them. Like if it's got 2 airline plugs on it, I'll plug them in both and use them. It doesn't have hurt to have 2 of them sticking in one tank. It's
These Pond Master pumps are made by Danner. That's the company name, but they just call them Pond Master. Mine is the model number is AP100, which I believe is the largest that they sell. But you can buy smaller ones. But they're just so durable.
Those Danner pumps are
quiet.
Okay, so guys, this is a little dusty, shows that I haven't been breeding lately, but because I used it when I had a bunch of different little tanks, right? And it's like industrial, looks so cool.
Oh,
it looks
that's
like a big old machine. Yeah, and then, it only has one output, but it's huge. It's like a screw. I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's like that's not the size of an air pump, but then it attaches to this.
Yeah.
It has all of those air pumps,
Oh.
but like that's so many, and this thing pumps so hard. It's like too strong almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would be.
But maybe if
I don't have any like that. I've never seen a
off
pump like that.
What's interesting though, what's really interesting, I got it on Amazon, but what's really interesting is that if I did try it once when my pump died. I was like, oh God, I don't want to leave the K1 not spinning. And so I tried to just attach the K1 airline to one of these and turn it on. And with all the rest of them open, it wasn't even enough power to spin the K1.
Oh,
Why is
wow.
that?
Crazy.
Like, how do you explain that?
I don't know. I've never seen a pump like that, honestly.
Well, it's like
That would be
okay,
really cool.
55 watts, 110 volt, 60 HC, output 60 L per minute, 60 liters, is that it? And it's an electrical magnetic air pump, right? And so anybody in the audience too. Oh, I'm so stupid. I just realized there's a hole down here too. So maybe I was supposed to do something with that. Who knows? It was a while ago. But yeah, anybody in the, hey, everybody coming in, anybody in the comments, let me know if you've ever used something like this. And like I'm not very scientific, so I can't do calculations very well, but I just can't figure out why with all this power, even if I only had one airline attached, why it would not work. Like, and if I blocked off the rest of them, then it did work. So it's something about I don't know. It's some
Well, you don't have
calculation.
you don't have to use it with that piece on there. You
But
put just a Y on it, or
it's an odd size tubing, huh?
This is the
You have to
thing.
get a bigger tubing.
So
just put a tube on there, and then you run the tube. You put that pump anywhere, and then you can run the tube from basement upstairs, wherever you have your stuff, and then just run splitters off of that line.
Go to the hardware store, like we have. I buy my tubing at Ace or True Value or Home Depot, and they have like a wall of all different size tubing. So you should be able to find tubing and parts to fit it.
Yeah.
You can run the tube and then find parts to split it, and in different sizes.
Oh, Kevin says
I found when we were plumbing my aquarium and stuff. Yeah, everything we used came from the hardware store. I didn't find anything I needed, at the aquarium stores.
Right, of course.
But Kevin said, size looks like that.
Kevin said the back comes off, and I can see it's screwed on. So you said it comes off and it has a filter in there. So is air coming in here, or what's the point of this? I just don't really get it.
Yeah, that's
I understand what you said, but a filter in there, so that must be pulling in air. I don't know.
An air filter. So maybe your air filter is clogged. Like if it pulls in dirt and dust from your house, maybe it got plugged up, and that's why it's not running right.
Well, the reason that when you just connect one line up to that multi connection there, the reason it doesn't work without plugging off the others is the air is going to take the path of least resistance. And if you don't have lines on the others, then
I knew it was science.
Wherever
that way.
Kevin said this is the suction port.
Thank you, Ray.
One thing you could do with that would be kind of cool is if you're running a tank with sand and rock, one of the best ways to keep detritus from collecting is to have airlines under the rock that are continually moving everything out. And a pump like that, you could add different air stones.
Under every rock, right?
Yeah. And you run it under your rock, and it will dramatically help keep the tank significantly cleaner.
I like it too because I don't feel like there's enough flow in the tank. I was all worried about not having or having too much when I first set the 40 all-in-one up. Now I don't think there's enough. So I will try that idea. And Kevin and Jeremy said need tubing and control valves. Okay, so if you guys have had this before, I'm sure I can look it up. But since you're here, I'm asking. What size of tubing do I need? I could just take this, I guess, but I don't.
Take it to the hardware store.
I will, but I'm just saying I hate trying to figure out sizes.
And you can try the tubes and try the pieces and
then I just need basically something that comes out of here that only has like 2 or 3, right? I think I got it.
You can even buy keys that are
the other thing, Kelly, that you need to keep in mind is all my air pumps have a filter on them. So when they're sucking in air, the filter catches any debris that's in the air rather than it going through the pump and into the tank.
Gotcha.
So it should have a filter on it.
Yeah, no, I get it now.
If
I
you
get it
take
now.
that end off, I bet it is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I trust. Kevin said he has one just like this, and he loves it. Ray, were
Now
you trying
I
to say
want one.
something?
I've never seen one
Poor Ray.
like that.
No, you don't have to use that multiple point there, with so many on it. You can have something smaller, but it all depends basically on what your needs are. How many sources are you going to need? How
Right.
much air is going to have to go to it? What you might have to do, I don't know the output of it, but what you might have to do is have one that bleeds off so you're not
Yeah.
restricting too much on the pump. If you
Yep.
restrict the pump a lot by not using up enough of it, you're going to wear out the diaphragm in there a lot
Yes,
faster,
absolutely.
and you won't get as much output. You can actually, by bleeding some off, get better flow.
Thank goodness for Ray and science, but
Yeah,
definitely, I think that's what I'm doing to my pumps is I'm screwing them up by trying to mess with them instead of just
No.
using them.
I
So-
have what I call bleed off valves on all my
Mm-hmm.
air pumps. And that means I can set the flow I want for my air in the tank, and then I'll use one of the other valves to bleed off the air that I don't need.
So you
And-
just mean like you've got an airline attached and then it goes to where? How do you bleed it off?
How do you know? Yeah, how do you know how much to bleed
Okay,
off?
well, like I usually use on each air pump I have a valve that has 4 outlets. And so I can use one for my air in the tank. I use one for my K1 media reactor. And then I use the other 2 to adjust the flow of the air.
Okay.
So I'm not putting any back pressure on my pumps.
So is the second one going in the water?
So is it in the water or in the air, like out
Yeah.
of the water?
Okay. The first 2, one would be hooked up to the K1 media reactor.
Right.
The next one would be hooked up to my airline in the main tank.
Mhm.
And then the other 2 are going to be bleed off valves. I use those to control the amount of pressure.
I
But
get that. Where do they go? Do they go into the sump?
Into the room.
That's what I was asked. Okay, got
So
it.
into
sorry.
the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just
Huh.
And then that controls how much air is coming out of the ones that are in the water.
exactly.
And
I got
I bet the length of the airline
That
matters
matters
too,
too.
probably.
I've
And then, no,
noticed
this is
that.
all great information though, because that's my other fear is that once I get something that only has 3 or 4 instead of 8 outlets, then it might be too strong. Like, my K1 might be like coming out, going crazy. But
just
There's plenty of tubing and you can adjust it. If you have one too long, cut it a little more till you figure it out.
yeah.
Because it's not expensive, that tubing.
Yeah. If you use the valves for air, they're real easy to adjust. And it's not a big deal. I do it
Well,
every
for anybody who watches this channel, I know there are people out there that are like, I'm so glad Kelly asked that question because I didn't know either. So I get it. It's easy. That's awesome. But I hope it helps somebody else too, because I admit it. I didn't know any of this.
I've never seen a pump like that either.
Kevin made the point.
Like
The airstone is a restriction, but also water volume is as well. You need to open a valve used, and you just take it away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The end of that was you need to open valve on used valves and one to bleed off pressure off some excess pressure. Sorry.
Exactly. And like when I do mine, when I go to feed, one of the things that'll happen if I forget to turn off the airline into the tank, my food's going to be sucked into the airline, which I don't really want. So I turn off the airline in the tank and just crank up the valve, my bleed off valve to the airline, and there's no real pressure change.
Huh.
And it's just my thing. It's what works for me.
And I've heard of a lot of people also like, I love this idea, Cheryl, because now I know what to play with. And I think Ray's been trying to say something this whole time. Poor Ray always gets out shouted by the women. But I appreciate everybody's help on this because now I've got a bunch of ideas. And I have heard people that will run extra lines like into the sump or somewhere where it can just be, you know what I mean? Like if you don't want that much in the tank, that would probably work too. So. And Kevin says, good question. So, hey. Sorry.
Anyway, I don't know how much
Yes.
that pump you got, what it costs, but the small pond master pump is good for in a pond up to 2,500 gallons, and it's $115. The big one I have is 320 something, and it's good for 10,000 gallons.
Wow.
I've got two of them.
Well, send me one, Ray. Just kidding. But no, this one, I think this one was, it was under 40, I think. And I was shocked. I was like, this, because it was like industrial grade and stuff. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Only $40.
Yeah.
So I'm going to play with it.
Yeah,
Maybe not
that's
have
way
one-
better
Standard
than any
pond
of my
master
pumps.
ones, you're paying too for the longevity that you can get out of them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they come with a repair kit when you buy them new now. They didn't do that when I first bought them.
See, I think that's really cool too. I didn't know anybody did that. That's so neat. Love it.
They're simple
Okay.
to repair.
Well, now we've had our pump conversation. I got it. I want to make sure we get to babies before 9:30. So, Holly, did I cut you off? Was there anything else new
I
with
got to
you?
go down and feed the seahorses.
Okay, go feed them.
No. Basically, yeah, I'm just, getting ready to change stuff around. I've had one of my males is courting two ladies right now. I have four
Ooh.
seahorses, in my display tank. There's Dandy, who's a little over 3 years old. And then Candy, who is almost 3 years old herself. And she has been courting her son, Scrappy Doo, who is now interested in his older sister, Sadie, as well.
Lovely.
And the problem is Sadie loves Dandy and she wants to be with him, but Dandy, as we've discussed before, is handicapped. And
Why she loves him.
So lately, he's getting upset because Scrappy Doo is pursuing Sadie. So he's been spending a lot of his energy trying to catch up with Sadie and Scrappy Doo and strangle Scrappy Doo and court Sadie. So I feel bad for him because he's just wearing himself out. I was feeding him, in a little shell dish because it was easy for him to get to, on the bottom of the tank. But past few days, he's been struggling to get to the real feeding station like the others do. And just, he's trying to put on a show, I think, that there's nothing wrong with him and impress Sadie. And it's kind of sad, but, this afternoon it was sweet. She spent like the whole afternoon courting with him, with Dandy, which was sweet. She wrapped her tail around him. She sat next to him and they did the shivering thing together. And she would really rather be with Dandy than with Scrappy Doo. I can tell.
Yep.
But he's not able to do the dancing. So, so when Scrappy Doo wants to dance with her, she does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that works. That's nice.
That's the Seahorse soap opera I've got going on.
There we go. And I'm just glad that I finally got off my butt and mailed you that stuff. I do apologize that you had to clean it, but it was heck of a work just mailing it. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm showing my laziness.
Yeah, and I felt bad because it weighed a ton, and I'm like, I probably could have bought. I don't know how much the Rebel Rock cost, but I was thinking I could maybe buy it for less than it costs you to mail it. I don't know.
Actually, no. Listen to this.
Is it expensive stuff?
No,
I've never seen it.
The Rebel Rock's not that expensive, but I have an excellent post lady. I don't know what you'd call her. But I live in a small town, so everybody kind of knows everybody, and she's just really nice. I go to the same post office. It's down the street every time, and she knows I mail. She even lets me sneak. Like when I was mailing macros out, she would tell me if there's water in there, it's really supposed to be this, that, and the other, and I'd be like, okay, there's no water in there, and she'd get me by. But when I went to mail it, I was like, okay, let's see how much this weighs. And I was thinking, oh God, it's so heavy. It's going to be expensive.
Yeah,
And,
it is.
and she weighed it, and it came up to like, I'll just tell you, I don't care. It came up to like
Yeah.
$36 to mail just that. And I was like, holy moly,
Yeah.
I'll still do it. I was still going to do it. But no, she said, wait a minute, grab me that box over there. And they have boxes that have flat
Yeah,
rate
where
shipping.
one
If you can
price for
shove it
the
in a
size.
box,
Yeah,
that's why
that's what I would do.
that's why when you got it, I know, because I
Yeah.
watched her put the Rebel Rock sideways, and then the K1 was in like a pack, and she just shoved it in there
Yes,
and bent it
shoved
up
it
and
in
got it
there,
to fit. It was great. So it ended up only costing like $16. So
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, it got here fine, but I'm like, oh man, that weighs a ton. That probably cost a fortune.
no, it was fine.
Yeah,
And
thank
just
you.
yeah, no
thank
worries, no worries.
So,
I hopefully you can, if you can clean out that container. Well, I don't know. You use it. You're using it for
well, I don't think I'll use the container for the K1. I'll probably end up
no.
using it for something else, but the Rebel Rock's just gonna go on the bottom of the Tupperware that I have the amphipods in.
Well, that's how it's supposed to be used. You're using
they
it
can
right.
live
The container that I made with all the holes and stuff, it was in my
Mhm.
90-gallon sump, and it was like
Yeah,
I had water feeding into the top, and then it would come out the
yeah,
side. So it's
yeah.
kind of like just, but you're
Yeah, because
using it the
I
right way.
read that on the container. I was reading all the things you could use it for,
Oh yeah,
which was
so many
cool because
things.
I had never seen it before. I didn't know such a thing existed. I'm like, oh, that's a cool thing. So
Well,
yeah, thank you.
make sure you tag me on any posts or anything that you do about it, because I love seeing things that I'm not using go to use, because the 90s not happening yet. We're gonna get to babies in just a second, because it will be back up and running if I
Real
ever have
quick, Molly,
adolescents.
real
Go ahead,
quick,
Cheryl.
Molly. The K1 Media Reactors,
Mhm.
if you go into the electrical department in Home Depot or one of those stores,
Uh-huh.
they have PVC tubes that are rigid, okay? And you can cut them to any length you need. Stick an air line in the hole because it's is hollow on the inside. They make great aeration for K1 Media Reactors, and they're like less than $2 a pop.
Huh.
Nice.
Well, I found a great video of how to make it out of a 2-liter bottle,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and it's really easy and really awesome. So
Well, we'll have to share that link. Send it to me, Holly, and I'll
I
share it
can
in the
send that
comments
to you.
afterwards.
Yeah.
They're
And
easy to
don't
build.
forget, guys. Well, the problem I ran into though is that I
Mhm.
was making this K1 media reactor for the 40-gallon all-in-one, and it's just not tall enough. Like Dan told me later, you could have still used a 2-liter. You just have to put it in the tank because the back chambers aren't big enough for a 2-liter bottle. He said you could have used a 2-liter
Put in
and
the
just
tank.
had the holes below the water level. That would have worked too.
Yeah.
But I hadn't thought about it I hadn't thought of that before I made it. So I just used a 1-liter bottle, and for the 40-gallon all-in-one, it's sufficient. It works. So
Mhm.
this awesome video that Holly's gonna link is great, but we'll post my video and everybody check that one
Yeah,
out too.
the thing is, the reactors are easy to make.
Yeah.
You can
almost
turn
anything.
darn near anything into a media reactor, pretty much.
Absolutely. And I mean, they're not that expensive. Like the one that was for there's a specific media reactor that's for the all-in-one. And I know there's hang-on back ones too. So they're not that expensive if you just don't feel like making one. But we're trying to give you options, because it
Right.
cost me like $1 to make mine. So
I turned all my old protein skimmers that I
I
had
know.
for years into K1 media reactors. I gutted them. I put the K1 in. I drilled holes in the sides. And I have a window screen over the top that keeps the K1 from falling out. I have pumping water through them and an air blast going on.
And if anybody wants to see that, another link I will not forget to put in the comments is I actually did a video with Cheryl's help. Oh gosh, probably years ago.
Yeah.
But she showed, and it's actually it's focused on fry rearing, and it has a lot of great information on that, including the nursery tubs and all of that. But it also has a section, which I'll link to that specific section, where she shows and describes how she made those K1 media reactors out of old Coral Life skimmers. So check that out when we're done. And just before we move forward,
super skimmers. I hate them.
I
They
know.
make great media reactors, though.
Yep. And Kevin, just before we move forward, Kevin said I have a 45 liter per hour pump, and it's been driving 8 separate tanks and rotifer buckets with no issues for a year. And Robert King has been using all of his tanks on the same pump for many years. So obviously, I just suck, guys, but I got a lot of new ideas from this show, so thank you. And speaking of which, I am working. I talked to Robert the other day, and he's working on my 2. Char chambers. If you missed the char chamber episode, go watch it. It's from last week, and these are going to be really amazing. I can't wait to do some videos about them and show you guys. But anyhow, and Ray said his has been running since the 90s. So very good. Glad to hear your soap opera is going well, Miss Holly, and hopefully we'll have some fries soon. Cheryl, anything new with you on the boy who always acts pregnant? Male who always acts pregnant, and then he's not?
I don't know. She's all of a sudden skinny, and he's all of a sudden fat, and they're not pointing and dancing anymore. But we'll see. You know, they're still very young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it's one of those things where I would actually prefer they wait until they, at least 5 to 6 inches before they start producing fry. That's when they start producing the nice, really big ones that are easy to raise. So I kick back and enjoy watch them dancing, and I'm not too worried about it.
Right.
I'm loving my orange pair also that I got.
Oh, good.
And the thing is, the little orange female is trying to dance with the big yellow male now. She thinks she's hot stuff.
That'll be interesting, though. Orange and yellow, what do they make? You know what I mean? What are they? You gonna have a bunch of little orange and yellow frylets, or what? That'd be interesting.
No way to tell at this point. But it's so funny watching her dance with him because he's definitely a lot bigger than she is, and she is not at all intimidated by him.
Oh, good.
She is. I am here. I am queen.
Yeah, I mean, hey, the female can be as little as she wants. I mean, she'll produce more eggs as she gets bigger, but it's really about the male pouch that that's really, really crucial.
I don't know. I'm not seeing any dropped eggs. The yellow female that he was courting suddenly got very skinny, which usually says she's past her eggs. But we'll see. Time will tell.
Well, and if anybody in the audience hasn't watched the previous episodes when we've chatted about this, Cheryl was actually helping me with the situation very similar to hers, where one of my girls would be fat, and they'd be dancing around. I'd see them spinning, and my significant other would make fun of them because they'd hit the top and be like, "Wait, we're doing something wrong." I mean, it took them quite a while to figure it out. I've never seen them connect. I've never seen the egg exchange, but I've also never found eggs. And the girl would get fat, and then she'd be skinny, and I'd be like, okay, they're somewhere. It's an all-in-one. It's not like they could hide.
Well, they can reabsorb the eggs also. That's the thing.
Oh, maybe that's what she's doing.
Yeah.
Maybe because he's not figuring out how to take them. Maybe she's saying, okay, more food for me, or more vitamins for me, whatever. But anyways, so the other day, here's my updates. The other day, the female that's been courting the most with this particular male, she was so big that I thought she was going to burst. I mean, I took a little video. I'll try to post it. She was from the front. She looks like a balloon.
They look like a football with a head on top and a tail on the bottom, basically.
Exactly. And so she looked like that. And I noticed, too, it was weird. She was hanging out at the top on the rings that Heather showed us how to use, the shower curtain rings.
Sandy gets like that.
She was staying at the top most of the time. But then I'd see him dancing and blah, blah, same deal. I'm like, whatever, you guys. When I finally see Fry, then I'll do something because I'm over you. I'm ticked off. But then the thing that I noticed, and I want you guys' thoughts on this, because I think that one of the tricks to them finally doing the true dance and becoming pregnant is that the male's pouch looks so different now, because he started off with the little pouch, and then he started ballooning it, so it got more stretchy and it got bigger.
Yeah,
but now what I know, but listen, now his pouch is not only bigger. I'm trying to show you. I'm not a seahorse, but now his pouch is not only bigger, but there's 2 lumps. Like there's a whole sack underneath, and I just feel like that makes sense. There's more room for the fry. They get down in there, and does that make sense to anybody? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think you have to be a woman to understand.
You have to be what?
I think you have to be a woman to understand. 'Cause
Maybe that's it. But what I'm saying is, here's the easiest way to put what I'm saying, is that the pouch starts out kind of rounded and it grows, you know, they start stretching in it and it grows like in size as the seahorse grows. But then I feel like once they're either pregnant or getting ready to be truly ready to be pregnant, it grows this way
Yes.
instead of out.
Yes.
It grows longer. So
It
now the pouch is
elongates. Exactly.
further down on his tail, and it looks more like two sacks. I'll try to post a picture.
Yeah.
As the males mature, the pouch definitely does elongate over time.
Yes.
And that's one of the criteria I use when I'm looking at a male thinking, yeah, I don't want any fry from you right now. You're going back into boy tank.
Right. Well, and my second update, I'm going to ask your question, Kevin, in just a second. But my second update would be that everything we've ever said about you can make a seahorse change color is true, because quick update, I got two very, very yellow Ocean Rider seahorses, two very, very orange Ocean Rider seahorses. They were in separate tanks, but both tanks had rock and not a lot of colorful stuff. I had colorful stuff in it, but the plastic plants that I had were like pokey, and the seahorses were wrapping in it and then getting caught kind of, and they'd struggle to get out of it. So I took them out, and it was basically just rock in the tank and a cheap light that was Cheryl's helped me figure out was putting off too much of a certain spectrum that they didn't like, and both the pairs turned like the color of rock, grayish, silverish, whatever you want to call it, in the color of rock. So in the 40-gallon one, which had the yellows and Aphrodite, I put new yellow plants in. I put better, I've got blue under the tank. The back is still black, but I put yellow plants in, and I changed the lighting spectrum, as Cheryl kind of helped me with, and they're turning back yellow now. They're not completely yellow, but you look at them and it's like, you can tell like in between their spikes and stuff, they're turning yellow again. So really interesting. So those are my two.
I have some that just are. I have one that Cheryl likes that I keep posting pictures. Cheryl's, I'll send her to me. And that one, not all the seahorses in that tank are yellow. You know, they'll be different colors. I have one that likes to be white because her favorite hitch is white. And I call her Princess because the coral she sits in is like a castle. It has all kinds of different, branches on it. And she just hangs out there all the time. And she wants to be white. And sometimes she'll get a little pink tinge to match the red tips on that coral. But this really bright yellow one that I have, her favorite place to hang out is on the black nozzle for the return.
Yeah.
But she's yellow as yellow can be and sits with a black thing. So she just likes to be yellow, I guess.
Well, let me update my statement. I should have said, typically you can get a seahorse to change the color you want, but they do have personalities. And if she wants to be yellow, there's nothing you're going to do to change that. So,
the other
some
ones
seahorses
are
are like
sometimes they'll be yellower or orange or whatever, but I don't have rocks in that tank at all. I have all artificial stuff, but not all one color. There's reds and oranges, and there's
give them options.
All kinds of different colors. White, a lot of it's white, but the ones that there's a couple white corals, and Princess hangs out on her own white coral, usually by herself, but 2 or 3 hang out on a different white coral, but they don't turn white to match it.
No,
they're
well, but they have personalities. And I'm going to let you speak, Cheryl, and then we got to get to Kevin's question. We're coming in on that 9:30 mark. But I agree with everything you just said, Holly. They have personalities, but I do think that we nailed it on the rock situation. I can't wait to see how things change once you take the rock out, because in every system that I've had, fake and artificial, the seahorses are bright and colorful in the color of decorations or what they originally were. Whereas tanks with rock, most of my seahorses turn the color of the rock.
See, what's interesting is in my display tank where the rock is, the seahorses in there are more yellow or shady who wants to be white than the ones in the grow out tank that have no rocks.
Right.
So
But the
I
thing
don't know.
is, yes, but the thing is, it's not just the rock. I'm not trying to
They
say
do
that.
have
Please
a
don't think
blue
that.
background in that tank,
You,
though.
you,
It,
you have
it's
to remember.
Lighting, before everybody starts talking, lighting, it also really, really matters. I know that for a fact. In
it
previous
does.
tanks, I've had seahorses completely turn bright yellow just because they were in a tank with different lighting. It was freshwater plant lighting. And I've had seahorses, the seahorses right now. I've the rock still in the tank. I did add some decorations, but I think the key was that I changed the lighting to a better
You
spectrum for
know,
them.
I've noticed with lighting too, Kelly, it's not just them changing, it's the way we see them.
Yes.
Because I changed the lighting on my display tank, it's programmable. So besides the normal reef lighting, it has settings where I can make it a cloudy day or storms passing through or whatever. And when I do that, the lighting changes from more a bluish tint to a yellow tint. And the seahorses will just look different while it's on that. Or when I'm taking their picture, with the different kinds of lighting, I can tell because from second to second, it's not them changing, it's me changing the lighting.
Gotcha.
It
I'm
changes
listening. I'm trying
how
to
they
handle
look.
a behind the scenes
Oh,
thing too. Sorry.
and I sent you that link on your private messenger
Okay,
for
cool. I'll make
making
sure it's
the K1 2-liter bottle.
okay.
One of the
Hang on
other
one
things that
second. Go
also
ahead.
impacts their color is going to be barometric pressure. I can tell you right up front, uh, when I get under a tornado warning or severe
Mhm.
thunderstorm warning, all my seahorses will congregate in the lower right back corner of the tank, and they
Mhm.
all darken.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure it's a stress-induced response.
They feel the
By the,
storm.
by the same token, my orange male, when he's courting, and he's the only one that does it, he turns silver. Go
Wow.
figure.
Yep.
Orange the rest of the time.
Well,
Uh-huh.
that's why we all get together and talk about this stuff is because
Mhm.
everybody has different experiences
Yeah,
and there's
it's
no
Yeah.
right answer. It's
they're
just
all individuals, and they
Well,
all
and
have their own
Dandy is
quirks.
never yellow. Like the other seahorses, all my other seahorses, they will be brown sometimes, like he is. He's brown, mostly dark brown, but sometimes he lightens, like, when he's courting, he'll turn like a really light tan and white, really pretty stripes. But most of the time, he's a darker shade of brown. I have never seen him turn any shade of yellow. Whereas my other male will
Mhm.
go from brown to yellow and various shades in between, but I have never seen Dandy yellow.
So I'm going to say something to this, but we have to get to Kevin's question, guys. So, but I'm of the opinion, Ray, you haven't spoken for a minute, so tell me your thoughts about my opinion in a moment. And we've talked about this before, but not only, and we give suggestions, like if your seahorse
Mhm.
is, black or brown and you don't like it, here's all these things you can try. Something might work. They'll changing the spectrum of lighting, putting a blue background, all of that might work. But I'm pretty convinced that at least between species, if not um, uh, because of the genes of the parents, that
Mhm.
I did a video. Sorry, I'm rambling, guys, but I did a video a long time ago about the melanophores. I'm probably saying that wrong, but basically that's how seahorses change colors. Is they have melanophores that um,
Chromatophores, yeah.
depend on how they're feeling, depend on what they're trying to
Mhm.
camouflage, and that's how they change colors. And I'm pretty convinced that based on species or parentage, they only have certain ones.
A
Like
range.
possibly reed eye might not have orange, but they do because we've seen orange reed eye. But
Yeah.
do you get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I think
For an
there's something to do with the
example, yeah.
genes.
They have a
I think
Yeah.
there's
range.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
It's just
always
like you
wanted a
guys.
red reed eye, but the closest I got to it was a reddish brown.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty.
Somebody do red reed eye.
Yeah.
Let's see.
The
I've
thing
seen
is,
them.
with reed eye, they typically have spots.
Yeah.
Erectus typically have lines. Those
Right.
are species specific colorations. Combs have
Absolutely.
the tiger tail, the
Mhm.
yellow and brown and
Snout.
yellow
Yeah.
rings. Those are pretty specific stuff, that's not going to change. The other thing you have to keep in mind is your water quality can have a profound effect on their coloration.
Amen. High five to that one.
And if one of my seahorses starts turning a hair darker than they are normally, I'm pulling out all the test kits.
Yep.
And
Great point.
100% of the time, everything is fine, and they were just over in the darker light. But I still have a tendency to go overboard to check on them and make sure they're okay.
Might as well. Okay, let's go to Kevin's question real quick. He lives in South Louisiana, and if he starts a seahorse tank, would I need to have a chiller for keeping the temperature correct? And would a 32-gallon BioCube work for like 4 seahorses? Let's take the chiller question first. Ray, what do you think?
Oh, I already said it depends
I know
on
we
what
answered
the
it.
ambient temperature is that the tank's in. Like if the room temperature is at 70, like I use air conditioning to keep mine at 70, and that's fine. You don't need a chiller then. But if you don't have air, and if your room is going to be up above 72, then I would say yeah, because your tank will end up above 74, and you don't want it above 74. But there's no way that tank is big enough for 4 seahorses
Right.
in a 32-gallon vial.
Yep, the recommendation is 30 gallons per pair, period. Dan used to say 30 gallons for the first pair, 15 for the additional pairs, but he changed it because just the more water volume you have, the better you can keep the water. Seahorses, we talked about this last week when we were discussing char chambers. It's their eating. Not only do they eat more than regular seahorse or fish, they eat a lot more, and they also, after they snick the food, they spit out some out of their, Dan knows the scientific term, but they're little holes in their head. They got little holes, and
Those
half
are
of
those
the
gill-
digested
those are
food goes
gill
spitting out into the tank.
Yeah.
What are they?
Those are their gill openings.
Gill
Gills.
openings.
Yeah,
There you
they
go.
blow it out their gills. And
Okay,
I would say,
go ahead.
from experience, to
The thing-
me,
yeah.
even a 30-gallon, just in my experience, you can do it with a pair of seahorses, but you're going to start feeling like it's too small for them because you'll be surprised how big they actually get.
Oh,
If
yeah.
they're erectus, the adults in my display tank are a good 8-9 inches. They're big.
Yes. Yeah.
My male was literally the size of bigger than my head. He was like 12
Yeah.
inches. It was
Yeah.
insane.
Keep in mind also when you're talking about a seahorse tank, not only do they basically digest about 30 to 33% of what they intake, and the rest goes in is detritus, because they do not have a true stomach. They basically have an open tube that goes from their snout basically to their anus. And when this happens, they're not digesting a lot. So all that detritus is going into the tank. And the other thing to keep in mind is everybody else has already pointed out, I've had erectus grow to 9+ inches. And that's getting to be really big.
Well,
And
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
one of those things too where when I started out with 29-gallon tanks. I'll be honest. That didn't last very long. All my 29s are now turned into sumps. My smallest current tank is 58 gallons.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to comment on everything everybody said. First of all, I, like Cheryl, my very first seahorse tank, which had 4 seahorses in it, a 29-gallon, 4 seahorses, exactly what you're asking about. It worked for about a year, but I'll tell you, if you have seen a picture of my first seahorse macro tank, it was literally covered in macros. So I had that helping me. And I also did huge water changes every week. Now, I ended up losing one of the seahorses. He got gas bubble disease, which we are pretty convinced, not for a fact, but pretty convinced happens because of high nutrients. So nutrients were likely too high in the tank, even though the macros were taken care of it. I had the types of macros that grow slowly, so they didn't need trimmed a lot. No chlorpa, more like blue scroll and stuff. So they didn't need harvested. So even though they were taking up the nutrients, they're still sitting in the tank, as Ray always points out about cleanup crew. Anyhow, within 6 months of having that tank, I lost one male. And then I added on a sump. My friend Ronald Chinners made me a custom made sump that had an algae scrubber on it. So I had macros in the tank, an algae scrubber in the sump, huge butted skimmer is what I also added in the sump. And then it lasted another 6 months. Then they started having babies, and I was like, oh, hell no. I have to have a bigger tank. And as far as the chiller, one thing that Holly kind of started to jump upon is it depends on the species. If you're talking about abdominalis, absolutely you need a chiller. I don't care where you're at. It is required with abdominalis, is my personal opinion. Yeah, they're a cold water species, and your house is not going to be 60 degrees, right? Hopefully not for you. But I agree also with Ray's, the way I do my tanks, I don't have chillers. I do have Erectus, not abdominalis, but I do have chillers. And I use central air. My whole house, I make sure it stays under 74 degrees. I usually set it on 69, and the tanks stay pretty much 69, 70-ish. So,
and I have central air, but I have a separate little window unit, a small one. I think it's 5,000 BTUs, and I have that is for my abs.
Yep. There's ways I'll try to find the episode. Ray actually showed us his very cool setup for abdominalis in his basement. I'll try to find that because it was pretty cool to see. Not trying to rush through anything, guys, but 10-minute warning. I have to go in 10 minutes. I have to get my
real
kid.
quick. I do not use chillers because I've got too many tanks to be messing with a bunch of darn chillers. I actually use what's called turbine blower fans, which are commercial fans that you can either set on the floor or set on a bucket, direct it at your sump, and it will drop a tank depending on whether you use low or high, anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I'm not potentially contaminating tanks with a chiller.
That makes sense, and different strokes for different folks. If you want a chiller, sure, but like Cheryl, having multiple tanks, it becomes really expensive to try to do chillers. Now, if you're like Deborah and have sea dragons, you got to have a chiller. Abdominalis, you got to. Or
you live where I live, and it gets really hot in the summer.
Yeah,
cooling it off by 3 to 5 degrees isn't going to do it. I have to drop the temperature by 20 sometimes.
Last point on that. Last point on that. Wait, hang on, Cheryl. Hang on 1 second. The key that, oh God, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around too much. The other thing that Heather mentioned is that biocubes aren't recommended as Seahorse tanks as they heat up too much. If you have a lid on, that's a temperature killer right there. I've had experiences where, I'm sorry, this is the point I was getting to, is that while we're talking about keeping a tank cool, under 74 degrees is recommended, more closer to 70. One of the things that surprised me is that the 40-gallon all-in-one, because of the temperature I keep my house, it's gone down to 68. And I got kind of worried, how low can you go? Is that bad?
That's what I keep my Seahorses at. I keep them
and
at
then
60.
I realized how many other people keep their tanks lower. And like Dan and Cheryl have pointed out, and Ray have pointed out, lower temps with the warmer water species like Erectus could possibly, if it gets too low, slow them down. Like they just they aren't as active or they're whatever, but it's very unlikely that you're going to hurt a seahorse with a lower temperature. So, a lot of people keep them at that. It's better than having it at 78. Last point. I'm so
counts down.
Bacteria counts down, absolutely. And the other thing is that, oh God, you guys keep making me forget what I was going to say. Go ahead, Cheryl. I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay, what I was going to say is Hippocampus erectus have been found as far north as Nova Scotia. They have been found in Hudson Bay when blue northerns blow through and the temperatures drop down to very low. And they just, when it warms up, basically they go torpid. Years ago, I lost power for over 13 hours with an ice storm that knocked out power to my house. And all my 1.5-inch long babies were laying on the bottom of the tank. That tank got down into the low 40s before I got power back. And I used a heating pad on the bottom and gradually, I spent 3 days heating the tank back up. Did not lose a single one.
Nice.
That should tell you how they handle cold.
Right. And I've remembered my point. I'm going to say it before I forget again. Because I had an experience like Cheryl's too. The opposite happened. The temp went way high, and the mistake I made, and I ended up having very sick seahorses that I had to treat forever with Furon 2 and stuff, is because they got a bacterial infection. Because the key is keep the temp absolutely under 74, but also it's not letting it jump too far too fast. Like the key that Cheryl did correctly is she brought the temperature up slowly. When I came in and realized that my seahorses were at like 80 degrees, because I don't even remember what happened, why that happened. I don't even remember why that. I think the power went out or something, and the central air wasn't working for hours. I can't remember the reasoning, but the temp was 80 when I got home, and I was like, oh my gosh. And so I started like ice cubes and bottles of ice and trying to do it real fast before thinking to call Dan or Cheryl. And I lowered it really quickly back down to 74. Doesn't seem like a 6-point jump would be that much, but they ended up getting very sick a month later. And we know that was the cause. So if you have a problem like that, like there are many people that keep their tank at 78 degrees. They just usually have huge tanks. They keep the nutrient level low, because that Ray hit the key on the thing on the nose on the head. I can't talk tonight, but the nose on the head is that you keep the temperature low so that your bacteria count is lower. The dirty seahorses, the bacteria, the organics, with all that mess going on, you keep the temperature low to keep the bacteria load lower. But if you've got a lot of tank space, a lot of water, and a lot of maintenance and a lot of equipment going on, nobody's saying you can't do it. People have. But anyways, okay, I'm done rambling. Anybody else? Because we're getting there.
BioCubes tend to run hot anyway. It's also, we recommend it's protein skimmer at 10 to 25, 2 to 3 times the total water volume per hour. So if I've got a 60-gallon tank, I need 180-gallon skimmer rated for 180 gallons. That takes up a lot of room, which means you're going to need a sump. So BioCubes tend to run hot. Does not give you the versatility of the kind of filtration you need to keep seahorses long term. And they also, the lighting, everything on them tends to be a little off. They're not really designed in seahorses. The smallest tank I'm running right now, other than my nursery tubs, are 58-gallon with a 30-gallon sump. I have 2 pairs in that tank.
Yep. And it's always better to be safer than sorry. But anybody trying that wants to set up for seahorses and doesn't have the room, doesn't have the desire or whatever to set up a huge tank for them, it can be done. It can. I did it for a year. It's just more maintenance, more risk if you're going to set up a small tank. But like that's my whole intention in setting up the 40-gallon all-in-one. I have 3 seahorses in there, and I'm trying to prove that you can do it with an all-in-one without a sump. So far, so good. Wish me luck. And, there's different ways to do everything. We tell you the best ways, but that doesn't mean you can't do it a different way.
Well, even my nursery systems, I have 2 20-gallon nursery tubs plumbed into a 30-gallon sump. We got a skimmer on it for 180 gallon tank. It also has a K1 media reactor, Purigen, activated carbon, filter sock. I'm sure I'm rubble rock. Okay, I build my sumps myself. But it's one of those things where, okay, so basically I've got 20 gallons or 40 gallons for the fish, and I've got 30 gallons for filtration.
Absolutely. But we all can't be Cheryl. So, and Cheryl Breed, she has multiple of these tanks, and she's been doing it a long time. She's not wrong. I'm definitely not saying she's wrong. That's the best way to do it. But for instance, in my 40-gallon all-in-one, I have a skimmer that fits in the back chamber that's rated 60 gallons. We like to be, 2 times the tanks, the gallons. So I really wanted one rated for 80 because it's a 40. But the biggest that it could fit in the chambers was a 60. So I'm trying it out. Then I depend on AquaChar. Again, go check last week's char chamber. Soon I'll be testing out char chambers, but I'm already using AquaChar. I do use Purigen too, and I have we've discussed it. It's not needed, but I have a UV skimmer just because it was made for an all-in-one and or UV sterilizer. Sorry,
Yeah.
but it's cute and I like it, so it's still there.
Okay,
But
Kelly, one
yes,
thing I want to say is, first of all,
and socks
you are an experienced keeper.
and
You've kept
rocks,
seahorses for quite some time.
right?
You know what they need. You also know how to do the cleaning, the maintenance, and you know how to look at them and say, "Oops,
Something's wrong.
it started to
Right.
hiccup. I need to do something right now."
Right.
And you can get away with it, but a lot of newbies starting out are
Won't do
not
it.
going to be able to get away with it.
No, I get she's not wrong, folks. Always bigger is better if you can do it. Get the skimmer rated 2 times. Do a sump. Holly, I think when she first joined, you didn't have. Did you have a sump, Holly, when you first started with us?
No, originally yeah, I had my 55-gallon. I had actually, yeah, I did have a sump, but it the tank was a freshwater tank. I inherited, and it had a sump that probably holds 8 gallons or 10 gallons. It was too small, and I couldn't fit any stuff in it really, like the skimmer or anything. So I had a little hang-on back skimmer, a cyclone, I think they call it. I had one of those. And not long after I got my big sump, holds 20 gallons, and a big skimmer rated for like a 360-gallon tank. And it's not too big, believe it or not, for the
Can't
55
be too
gallon.
big, right?
No.
Nope.
I have 2 pairs of seahorses in the 55-gallon with a big sump and a big skimmer, and it's not too much. I'll say
Right.
that. Bigger is better for the Erectus. Anyway,
Right,
If you
Kevin-
can't do anything about a skimmer,
and
you can
they'll
always
use
use it.
like 5
canister
inches,
filter.
4 inches, and you'll think, oh, this tank's plenty big for them. But they grow and grow, and you'll be thinking, oh, and you'll be doing tons of
Right.
water changes because you'll be trying to keep it clean enough. And yeah, just more water and more filtration.
But seriously, that is the key. It's what you're willing to do because you
Mhm.
just can't let organics build up. So if you're in a smaller tank or a sumpless tank, you just got and like I said, my 29-gallon, I added on a 40-gallon sump with an algae scrubber and etc. And I used an overflow box in a little 29-gallon tank. It was kind of ridiculous, but it helped and it worked. Because you just realize as you go on. Kevin just reminded me it's 9:40. We are at the 2-minute. Ray wanted to talk, and then anybody can say whatever they want. 2 minutes.
If you can't do anything with a suitable skimmer, you can use a canister filter, which I hate, but you can use a canister filter with a lot of carbon in it.
Yes.
But before the carbon, you want mechanical filtration. That unfortunately, with a canister filter, you're going to break it down twice a week and clean that filter so that the bacteria levels don't get up too high. But enough carbon in there, and that'll take the place of the skimmer to get rid of the dissolved organics.
Or Aquachar. Gotta keep saying it, guys.
Real quick,
They're
Can't tell me on that, unfortunately.
I haven't sold Ray. Wait, guys, we're all talking
Years
once.
ago,
I know.
had a canister filter. It was just a lot of maintenance.
I know everybody wants to talk. Everybody always has lots to say when I tell you we got to go. But I haven't sold Ray in the Aquachar yet. We'll see. We'll keep testing with the char chamber. And real quick, the Seahorse Corner said I had my sea shed open during the day. Go check out the sea shed video on Wednesday if you want to see that.
And she
But
forgot
open
to
during
turn on
the
the
day.
heat.
Yep. Went to feed and shed was 56 degrees. Tanks went to 60. They were sluggish, but okay. Just more proof. Okay. Cheryl asked, or Holly asked,
99.9% of us don't have to worry about it because we can't afford a shed.
Yes, true that. Okay, Holly, last words.
Oh, I was just saying my grow out tank, because of the room it's in, in the winter it gets real cold. The heater is not strong enough to keep that big tank as warm as I'd like it. So there's times when it drops to about 64, 63 or so.
Yeah.
And yeah, they'll be slow, but they'll be okay. They won't eat all their breakfast that day. They'll be slowed down. But
okay, good night, Kelly.
Good night, Ray. Cheryl, last words.
What, you leaving to go pick up your daughter?
I have to, guys. I'm so sorry. No after party today. I apologize. Okay. Hey, listen. Did you have anything else, Cheryl, you wanted to say last minute? Or
I just want to say real quick, the 58 gallon that currently has my 2 pairs in. Before I broke it down, the last time was raising over 53 to 3.5 inch seahorses in that tank.
Mm-mm.
I had several tanks set up. I adopted a bunch of babies, newborn babies, and had a little too much success.
Well, that just sucks when you're so successful. Hey, everybody, remember that we will be discussing the bill next week. If that does not sound interesting to you, you're wrong, because we're going to have a lot of special guests here. And we'll still, every time we do one Wednesday, I make sure there's time at the end for any questions. That it could be how many seahorses in a tank. I don't care. Any questions, we always have open chat before I end it. But it's a really important conversation. Francis, we need to get you in next week too to give us some updates, and I think there's some questions that I haven't even answered yet.
You ought to see what his combs have turned into now.
Yeah, we need to see.
Send me some new pictures. I'll show them before we start the bill conversation.
One's getting a pouch. They're changing their colors.
Amazing. He went from he's
fat.
Nice. He went from 60 horses that he didn't think he could handle to Dr. Cheryl helping, and now look at this. It's amazing. Nice. Shows what good work we do. Anyways, guys, I gotta call it. It's 9:47.
Just you leave and we'll stay, Joe.
I can try that. Okay. Happy One Wednesday, everybody. We will see you next week for the important conversation about saving the hobby. Everybody say cheers.